Hi, I'm Dennis Pollock, and welcome to another edition of our Beat Diabetes Books and Quotes series. Today we're going to be looking at what I consider a classic, Dr. Jason Fung's The Diabetes Code. Now, I guess technically you couldn't call it a classic because it's only been written about 5 years ago, so it's only been out a short time. 5 years is not much in the world of books, but already it's been no doubt read by millions, quoted by many, including myself. And I think it's an excellent book. Wish I had time to go into more details with you, but we're just trying to keep these little videos short. So I'll just share a couple of the quotes in the early part of the book. If you've watched many of my videos, you know that I respect Dr. Jason Fung greatly in terms of what he has to say about diabetes, and I have quoted him frequently. I've done a review on this book where I talked more at length, but on this edition, we're just going to look at a couple of quotes and call it a day. Let's start out with one of his basic declarations, which is something exactly like what I will say frequently. He says most health professionals consider type 2 diabetes to be a chronic and progressive disease. Let me just stop there. Chronic means you have it all the time. A chronic headache means you've got the headache all the time, day and night, 24/7. You've just got a headache. It's chronic. It's always present. Omnipresent, you might say. And then progressive means it just is going to get worse. It's bad now. It's always there. And progressive means it will get worse and worse as the days go on. And he says most health professionals consider type 2 diabetes chronic and progressive. You've got it. You'll always have it. It's only going to get worse. Here, take a few pills. Maybe that'll slow things down a bit. He goes on to say this promotes the idea that type 2 diabetes is a one-way street, a life sentence with no possibility of parole. This disease only gets worse until you eventually require insulin injections. Well, that does not give you much hope, does it? I mean, if you really believe that, you're hopeless. You don't really have anything to set your hope on. You're bad now, you'll be worse tomorrow, next year, and they'll end up giving you insulin. That won't help. It'll just get worse. Pretty depressing. And when you are without hope, my friend, your motivation has just drained right out your toes. You have no motivation to do anything because you've already been told there's no hope for you. It's chronic. It's progressive. It'll get worse. So take your pills and try to have as much of a life as you can given your terrible, depressing, gloomy, hopeless situation. He doesn't believe that. I don't believe it either. And we've got testimonies by the hundreds, if not thousands, declaring that people have reversed their diabetes and gone from diabetic to non-diabetic by the numbers. He talks about how he knew from early on as a medical doctor that there was a pretty close relationship between diabetes and obesity. And no, not every diabetic is overweight, but most are. There are a few that are skinny, type 1s, that would be more the case, but there are occasional type 2s that are slim, but that's rare. In most cases, you're overweight. He says this, my diabetic patients would often say, Doctor, you've always said weight loss is the key to preventing or reversing diabetes, yet you prescribed me a drug that made me gain 25 pounds. How is that good? He says, I never had a satisfactory answer. But he's right. When you give people insulin and some of the other diabetic drugs, they will cause you to gain weight, not lose weight. And how is that really helping? So the drug itself may be helping lower your glucose, but if it's causing you to gain weight, your situation is going from bad to worse. Not a good situation. And so you got to find a way to beat diabetes so that it won't cause you to gain weight. And this was his dilemma for a long time. He says the key to treating diabetes properly was weight loss. Logically, because it caused weight gain, insulin was not making things better. It was actually making the disease worse. And of course, that brought him eventually to the place where he saw lifestyle and diet are the one answer that will cause you to lose weight, not gain weight, and help you really, truly beat diabetes. And when we're talking about diet, we're of course talking about the low carbohydrate, the restricted carb diet. He says the same principles that are used for reversing type 2 diabetes also apply to preventing it. Obesity and type 2 diabetes are closely related, and generally increased weight increases the risk of diabetes. The correlation is not perfect, but nevertheless, maintaining an ideal weight is a first step to prevention. And one of the beauties of the low-carb diet is that not only will your glucose numbers come down, and not only will your A1C come down, but you will lose weight without hardly having to try. You don't even have to think much about weight. You just go low carb and cut the carbs out of your life and out of your diet, and the weight comes down. So really, a low-carb diet deals with the issue of weight. In fact, one of the complaints I hear from time to time, and fairly often, is, well, hey, I'm skinny and I go low-carb, it's going to make me skinnier still. Sometimes it will for a while, but usually it'll level off at a certain point. It certainly did for me. When I first went low-carb, I lost weight. And I went from in the 190s down into the 150s. Now, 5'10" and 150 isn't all that bad of a weight, but for me, I looked terrible. And I looked very skinny, and I knew it. But I wanted my health back. And so I bore with it. But after a while, I found more recipes. I found more things I can eat, and my body kind of leveled off. And then here I am today. I have to work to stay under 170. So if you're skinny and you say, I can't do the low carb, yeah, you can. You may not be able to do the intermittent fasting, but you can definitely do the low carb. So if you say, well, I can't get by on 2 meals a day, I'm too skinny, go ahead and eat your 3 meals, but make that breakfast like 0 carbs. Have some eggs and some bacon or some meat, and just don't have any carbs to it. If you're going to have carbs, better to have them for your lunch meal. But Dr. Fung is right. Weight loss is a big deal. I know we don't talk about it much in this channel, and the low-carb movement, it's kind of an incidental situation, but it needs to happen. But it's not likely to happen if you're taking insulin. Now, the type 1 can get by with taking some insulin because they don't make any insulin on their own. But if you're making lots of insulin as a type 2, and then you're adding more insulin injections to it, it's going to be very difficult for you not to gain weight. And so you've got to solve it. The answer is lifestyle and diet, and that means a low carbohydrate diet. You cut those carbs way down. Your insulin levels are going to drop, your weight's going to drop, and you're on the road to recovery. I want you to know that I have another YouTube channel. It's called by my name, Dennis Pollock, and on this channel, my wife Benedicta and I teach the basics of the Bible in a simple, user-friendly fashion. Normally, on Mondays, I post what I call a video devo, in which I take various Bible topics and share scriptures to help you understand the subject a little better. On Thursdays, I post Bible studies by Benedicta and me as we sit at our dining room table and discuss various portions of the Scriptures. We cover book studies and Bible character studies. So catch me on Mondays sharing devotional talks, and Benedicta and me on Thursdays as we study the greatest book in the world, the Bible. Check in the description to find a link to our Bible teaching channel, which is called by my name, Dennis Pollock.